Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdul Wadud, and welcome to this morning's webinar brought to you by the Association of Muslim Schools. Jazakallah khair for giving up your precious time. I know it's a busy time in schools at the moment with kids coming back. I hope everybody's safe, everybody's doing well, and inshallah, we hope for success around the corner with everything that's going on. This morning's session is scheduled to last somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes. The session is being recorded and will be uploaded onto YouTube. And inshallah, throughout, if you do have any questions, we hope that during the presentation we can answer most of them. If we're unable to do so, there will be a session, a Q&A session towards the end. So do please post any of your questions on the chat, and inshallah Shazia will collate those. So a little bit about AMS before we actually get started. So for those who aren't familiar, and I'm hoping the majority are, the Association of Muslim Schools has actually been around since 1992. It's a membership organization that represents Muslim schools up and down the country, all over the UK, at varying levels. In particular, it's recognized by the Department of Education. It regularly sits on forums and discussions with the DFE. One in particular is around this particular topic around RSE. So it's something that the AMS have been involved with for some time now, and inshallah will continue to do so going forward. If you do want more information on the AMS, please jump onto the website ams-uk.org. Now, in terms of the morning session, it'll be run by myself and my colleague Talal. I myself am the project manager for this RSE program, and Talal, alhamdulillah, is our RSE curriculum manager, the architect behind developing the actual planning and the resources that go with this program itself. So inshallah, between the two of us, we'll run you through this this morning's webinar. We've got an agenda, and we hope to inshallah cover most of these items at a high level, and in some cases we'll go into a little bit of detail, but like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So we'll go a little bit into the process as to where we've been and how far we've got to this stage. We'll go into the resources, which I'm sure everybody's really keen to know about, the training that we've developed to support the resources, how we inshallah would like you to get involved in providing us feedback, how you can access the materials, and then finally a little bit of a Q&A. So the process. Now, for many of you who would have been following our journey, you would have known that we've always approached this in 3 phases. And from the outset, alhamdulillah, we have been able to deliver more or less within the timescales that we've set out to do so. So early December, we put together a suite of documentation to support the schools through policies, auditing tools, a long-term plan, a framework to get everybody started, get everybody comfortable, and to give you a bit of a flavor of what's planned ahead for our RSE program. Stage 2 is where we are at the moment, phase 2, should I say, summer term resources. So this is all centered around us being able to provide you a suite of resources that you can take into the classroom and start using to deliver RSE lessons. And inshallah, by the will of Allah, alhamdulillah, we've managed to get there. And we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And then phase 3 is about completing this scheme of work, this curriculum, and putting together the remaining pieces of the puzzle, the autumn and spring resources, which inshallah we will start on as soon as next week, if we haven't started on it already. Now, one thing to mention is we've actually added a further phase to our program, and that's called a curriculum refresh. Now, what we feel as a team is that we need to, at some stage, we need to ensure that the material that we've developed, we incorporate the feedback from colleagues, from peers, from people who are trying it and testing it, and we need to incorporate that into a refreshed curriculum. And so that's something that we'll move on to probably towards September 2021, as this scheme is in kind of full rollout mode. But between now and then, obviously, there's a lot to do before we get to that stage. I'm going to ask my colleague Talal to come in now and explain a little bit about the cycle that each lesson plan has gone gone through. And it's really important that the colleagues that have been able to join this session understand and can appreciate actually the process that it's gone through, because I think inshallah it's something that we can all be proud of. Over to you, Talal.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Abdul Wadud. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. First of all, thank you all for joining us, and especially those of you who have been part of the process, the writers, the schools, the checkers. Alhamdulillah, it's been quite an intense process. So I'll just go through that the process we had. Not just a case of me or one of the writers putting a lesson together and thinking, yeah, this looks about right, and I think it's ready to go to schools for them to use in the classroom. There's a process of writing, piloting, refining. And the process is, it's for all our lessons. So I'll just give you a little overview of how this works. We have a process of writing where between us, the writers, we do some drafting and then editing, a bit of back and forth until we feel that, okay, this looks now like a solid lesson. So that's in between the writers and myself. We do a writing, drafting process. A bit of back and forth, the draft is done, there's some editing, redraft, some suggestions, back and forth. At this point then, lesson will go to design and typesetting, where the alignments are sorted out, any particular design issues are resolved. From there, if there are any edits required, we'll come back to the writer. If not, we'll go to then the Islamic content check. Content check, so that we go to scholarly people and they have a look at the use of ayat of the Quran, a hadith of Rasulullah, and they check, are they authentic? Are they relevant? Was there a better option? Sometimes we as writers might think that actually this ayat or this hadith is appropriate for this lesson, but our scholarly check will advise us, actually, maybe you could have done this, maybe this is more appropriate. So we have that Islamic content ulama check. It comes back to the writers, they re-edit. Then from that point onwards, it goes to pilots. So the pilot phase is into the schools. So we've done the theoretical part now of planning a lesson. What does it look like in the classroom? In the pilot phase now, we get feedback. We realize, hold on, actually, this part the pitch maybe wasn't quite right. Maybe this video wasn't as appropriate as it could be. So that comes back. Writers have a look at that again and say, okay, we take on board that feedback from the piloting and let's, put those edits in. From that point onwards, back to design and typesetting. And at that point, you're feeling like, okay, now it's ready to go for the proofreading. So the proofreading team come in, they do a proofread of it. It goes, and then it comes back to me for my kind of final check. Then it goes to the AMS Shura, who will have a look at it and offer their suggestions. Alhamdulillah, we've got very, Shura members who are very experienced and very capable. So they will offer their suggestions. And then what will happen is, if there are any edits still required, they'll come back to me, and there'll be a back and forth between me and the Shura team to say, okay, have we got this lesson where we want it to be? And then it goes to completion phase. And this has been the process for phase 2. Moving on to phase 3, alhamdulillah, we've learned some lessons from this phase, and the process is going to be tightened even more. So inshallah, we'll go through that maybe in the future webinars of, our kind of writing, editing, piloting, editing, refining process, inshallah, in future.
Great, Jazakallah khair, Talal. So let's move on to the next part of the program, phase 3, for a moment. So phase 3, just want to fast forward a little bit in terms of what's planned. So as I mentioned earlier on, the focus is going to be around compiling the rest of the curriculum, which is centered around the autumn and spring term resources, so that by the end of June, inshallah, you'll have a full curriculum across secondary and primary to deliver. So that will be one of our main priorities. Another priority of ours will be linked to what Talal just mentioned in relation to the actual process itself. Now we're just going through the process at the moment where we're undertaking a critical review of our project. So what we've done is we've commissioned two independent bodies, two bodies who are experienced and well equipped in developing commercial schemes. So they're currently undertaking a critical review of our curriculum. The plan is for us to improve in what we're doing and to perfect it and to inshallah make strides towards something that we can really kind of be proud of. We're there, we want to improve, but we feel as though there are opportunities for us to do even more. So that's another pivotal output, inshallah, from phase 3. Alongside that, there's a few items that you can see on the right-hand side, a few icons. So we will start planning towards how we're going to approach this curriculum refresh. We'll start looking at other tools that we can possibly provide you in relation to supporting you. So throughout the program, whether it be phase 1 or phase 2, we've always considered other ways that we can support you with tools or taking feedback from the school. So one of those considerable inputs was training. How can you support us to deliver those lessons? So we've bolted that on. Documentation, webinars, etc. So that's one of the things that we will inshallah continue to do. So another element is to create a working group. So the idea here is that the colleagues who are inshallah buying into the scheme and those who haven't, is as the delivery of this subject becomes active within schools, we'd like to, in essence, set up like a subject leaders group where colleagues can come together and talk a little bit about their experiences, their challenges, their problems, their opportunities, etc., so that we can learn and collectively we can share best practice. And then finally, we're looking at, again, something possibly in phase 3 or beyond, or more so for phase 4, is some form of quality mark centered around this curriculum that we're developing. Something that an external body can validate in essence with regards to what we're doing, what we are hoping to achieve. So that's another element of phase 3. Now, resources, and I know this is probably the central theme of this webinar, or the thing that most people are really here for. So again, I'm going to pass over to Brother Talal, who will talk to you more around the resources that have been developed in phase 2.
Okay. I'll just ask you to just go on to the next slide. If I say next to Brother Abdul, then just go to the next slide. Okay. Okay. This is we'll start with the overview. Then this is the primary long-term overview, and I've gone through this in quite a lot of detail previously about mapping the content from the statutory content into year groups. There's been a tightening of this. Speaking of this, for a few reasons. Firstly, following feedback, so that some schools wanted that there were the different modules, families, caring, friendships, being safe, etc., were consistent across each year group, so that they were getting exposed to this in each year group. So there was a kind of a moving around of the modules to fit around that. Also, wherever possible, we thought that some things could be made more concise. Some of the objectives, or a couple of objectives, were merged to make them more concise. And so this is the example of primary. Brother Abdul, the next. Just click on next for me, Brother Abdul. Yeah. So the secondary, here's secondary. You can see that there were 38 objectives in primary. There's 30 in secondary, and the way they've been mapped out, this is like a long-term overview. If we just have a look at a couple of examples of the medium-term objectives. So the next one, so here's an example of a year 9 medium-term plan, where the objectives have been put into a medium-term objectives on the right-hand side. That's kind of our narrative in terms of what the lessons are going to look like. What does it mean when we say, for example, in online and media, objective 17, impact of viewing sexually explicit material, including pornography? What does that mean for us in terms of the path, the narrative we want to take? See that there's elements there which are associated with the psychological impact, but there's also Islamic perspectives and strategies that our children can use to deal with the temptation and avenues of sport. So that gives medium-term objectives, give a narrative from the long-term objectives. And essentially, most of you will have seen the long-term and medium-term plans. These are just been tightened a little bit and refined, and some movement has taken place. So this will be available for download with the rest of the material, inshallah, after tomorrow, I think, or whenever, whenever it's when it's available, I think either today or tomorrow. Okay, so if we just move on. In terms of the lesson plans, I just want to share with you, again, I've talked about the process of the constant refining of the process of lesson writing. So I just wanted to share with you just how it's become a bit more refined in terms of one is the aesthetic part of it, and one is even, the content-wise. So on the left-hand side here, of the left-hand side of the screen, you've got the example that was shared at the beginning of phase 2 in terms of the templates that we're going to use, and the example on the right-hand side. I've just taken a few slides out from the lesson plan. So you can see how there's a slightly tweaking and a tidying and a bit more, sharpness to the lesson. So look at the next one. Again, just an example of that. On the left-hand side, we see that we went with the approach for the lessons based on the 5E approach, which was developed in teaching in America, which looked at engaging learners, exploring content, explaining content, elaborating upon it, and evaluating on it. Originally, we went with the 4E approach. Following feedback, we had to really say, okay, where's the evaluation part in that? Where's the review? So then we adapted the 4E approach to another 4E approach, so we could include the evaluation within it. So now it became engage and activate, explore and explain, elaborate and reflect, evaluate and review, a 4-part to the lesson. Some of the lessons are double lessons like this one here, where there's quite a lot of content to get through. So there's double lessons, but will be single. Next slide. So again, you can see how just a little bit of a tightening up of the objectives and stylistically as well. Next slide. And there you've got an example of how the review has been fitted in, and on the right-hand side, how the review element has been fitted in. So for the teachers, they're able to use the planning as they see. And I'll talk a bit more in detail about how teachers will need to think about taking the planning and owning it. Ownership is important. We know about one is having the knowledge of the subject. When we're going to teach, we need to have knowledge of the subject. We need to have knowledge of our children, and we need to have knowledge of how children learn. So these 3 components make up essentially making a quality lesson. This is the planning aspect of it. Now, in terms of the teachers taking ownership, that's where the training will come in, and we'll touch upon that. And I'll also touch upon that here later on in this presentation, inshallah. Okay, so the summary is then, our curriculum is bespoke. Alhamdulillah, we decided that what do our schools need, and what is not out there at the moment. There's no scheme which teaches relationship and sex education or relationships education at primary level via an Islamic narrative, and is compliant, and is meets the needs statutory wise. So, and is of high quality. We want it to be high quality. So that's what we aim to do. And inshallah, we're in that process. I think it is quality. I think there's definitely always room for improvement, and we'll discuss how we're going to feed that in, especially the refresh in phase 4. In this part, then phase 2 is summer term planning. There's 32 hours of lessons. So they're split up into 16 in primary and 16 in secondary. So you have 16 primary lessons covered in 12 lesson plans. Some of the lessons are double lessons. It doesn't mean as a school you have to teach them as double lessons. You can split them over 2 weeks if required. And the 16 secondary lessons covered in over 9 lesson plans, and most of them are double because of the heaviness of the content. I explained already the 10-step cycle in terms of our kind of ensuring that we're trying to get the lessons where we want them to be and they're fit for purpose. I would like to thank the 7 pilot schools who have supported us in this process. And again, other schools who are not aware of this and would like to be part of the pilot in the later phase 3, you're more than welcome to request being part of the pilot. Talked about Islamic content QA, the quality assurance of that. so that you have validation of that, this is authentic and correct from Islamic point of view. And the hundreds of hours, it's more than hundreds of hours, as have been put in by the writers, by the team to develop this. And moving forward, there will be, that much. The lessons that you will get after phase 3, inshallah, will be, in the 100, around about 100, maybe more. Okay.
Great. Jazakallah khair, Brother Talal. Thank you for that summary, and really appreciate your support to get us to this stage. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about training. So one of the things that we understood quite early on was that people, a lot of our schools and a lot of the people who are interested in the scheme were quite keen on us to develop some training materials to support the implementation and to support the actual delivery of this particular scheme, and RSE in general, to be honest. So we've always taken that approach of supporting and providing a helping hand along the way. So as a team, we decided quite early on that we needed to bring in an additional resource. So alhamdulillah, we recruited a trainer. So we've got Sister Lena on board, who's come in, mashallah, with loads and loads of experience from leading schools and delivering training sessions. So she's come on board. With her support, along with myself and Talal and others, we've managed to analyze all of the data. So what we've done is we've kind of done a bit of a deep dive into the lessons and said, okay, which of the topics might be a bit sensitive, which might be a bit difficult, which ones might our schools need support on. We've also run a bit of a focus group with the piloting schools to understand how they felt. We've also reached out to everybody who's bought the scheme so far to ask them for their feedback. So we've analyzed all of that, crunched all of that data, and off the back of that, we created a scope. And that scope has then allowed us to say, okay, between now and the end of phase 2 or the end of phase 3, what training support can we provide our schools? So what we decided was we were going to create an online training module. So this is a platform that's available off the AMS website, and I'll show you a little bit later how you access this. So the plan is in phase 2, inshallah, and it will be slowly fed to you with the first one available, module 1, best practice guidance available to you as of tomorrow, that we will explore various elements of training and support that we feel is needed. And we will provide them in short bite-sized videos, 25-30 minutes long, training that can be shared amongst the school between leaders and those who are teaching, and something that you can go back and forth to. And alhamdulillah, it's a really valuable asset, we feel, to the whole program. Really simple, you click that button, the video comes up, you can kind of toggle, you can make it large, you can make it small, but we really feel as though it's going to add a lot of value to the overall curriculum. Talal, did you want to add anything in relation to the kind of topics that we've picked?
Yeah, the point I mentioned before about the planning a resource being a resource, and planning being planning. The key thing I would mention here is ownership. As teachers, what we want to do is when a resource comes our way, we want to own that resource. This resource now, I need to get my head around it. I need to spend some quality time, understanding the resource, and then thinking through how am I going to make this resource relevant to my children, my classroom? What do I need to do? Now, one thing is that you adapt it and in a safe way. By safe, I mean that each of us as teachers has our preferred style of teaching. And we get used to, even our classrooms and our children, they start learning in a particular way because the teacher is too rigid in the way that they approach. So you become safe. If you like group work, you always kind of tend to go towards group work. If you like the teacher-led activities, you kind of tend to be like that. So sometimes it's good to be able to take a lesson plan and take some risks. As teachers, if we want to develop our practice, try out different strategies. So we have the lesson plan. One is to own it, adapt it to your needs. Secondly, to take the lesson plan and, think about the different strategies you can use. So what we decided to do was, okay, put ourselves in the position of teachers and thought, okay, if you were going to teach, for example, role play within the planning, how would you do that? What would you do? What are the things that you need to think about? If you are going to think about now, we're going approach some serious concepts like pornography, like violence, sexual violence. There needs to be a maturity around the children environment is created. Is the environment created well so that the children are ready to tackle these topics? So that's how the training modules have been developed, where we want to support the actual resource itself. And that's where these different modules come in, where you can click in and think, okay, here's a model lesson. So Lena's modeling an actual lesson or components of the lesson. And you're saying, okay, yeah, I understand now how you would take this from the lesson plan, and this is what it looks like in the classroom. Is that okay?
That's brilliant. Jazakallah khair, Talal. Jazakallah khair. And inshallah, with the training, as you provide us more feedback and input, and as we learn, we will build on this training, on these training modules, and we'll add to them, inshallah. Okay, so feedback. Feedback is so important for us. Alhamdulillah, we can't be more grateful than to the 7 pilot schools who got involved and gave us the feedback and the input that was required, because it's made a real difference to the way that we viewed it and then the way we've kind of presented the final product. So again, we would invite everybody to be involved in the feedback process. So we've offered 2 feedback loops. One is via a working group and one is through a feedback form. So the working group is really simple. At the end of every half term, or towards the end of every half term, we will aim to have, as I mentioned earlier on, a subject leadership kind of group centered around this particular topic. And the idea is that we get together over Zoom for an hour, hour and a half, and we talk a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities, and we'll set an agenda and we'll host a session properly. The other means by which we would ask for feedback is for you to fill in a feedback form. So if you jump onto the website, get involved, feedback form, this form will come up. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, it is a little bit lengthy. It can be a little bit wordy. So if there's elements of it that you feel are just too much, just put an NA in there or leave it blank if it's possible. But the more feedback that you can give us, the better it is, because in all honesty, without us knowing where we've gone wrong or where we can make improvements, we won't know how to approach it necessarily from a user's perspective. We're trying our best to do the things that we can do by piloting it, but alhamdulillah, when this goes out to the 40, 50 schools, it's going to make a real difference as everybody gets involved. Now, access, and I know everybody's keen and eager to know, how do I access my resources? Okay, so what will happen following this meeting is everybody will get their own unique access details. So I'll talk you through the process. So what you do is you go to the RSE hub, okay, and you click that icon there, the button there, watch now under training. That will then take you to this user login page. Everybody will be given their own unique user login details, and that will be sent over to you, inshallah, tomorrow morning by midday through the RSE email address. You log in and you come to this screen. Now, when you come to this screen, it gives you 2 options. One is to watch the training modules, so the 5 videos, of which only 1 is available at the moment. The rest, inshallah, will come through by next week. And then, depending on which scheme you've bought into, you will get access to those materials. So if you have bought into both primary and secondary, then you will see the download buttons for both primary and secondary appear on your login. If you have only bought into primary, then you will only see primary. And if you have only bought into secondary, you'll only see secondary. So to reiterate, depending on what you bought into, that's what you'll get access to. But everybody will get access to all the training modules. And it's as simple as that. You click the buttons, the video appears, you click the download button, and the files will download. So inshallah, by Friday tomorrow, before midday, before Jummah, inshallah, everybody will be given access. Now, alhamdulillah, half an hour has flown by, 31 minutes, and I hope, inshallah, we've covered most of what we aim to cover. And I hope we've covered most of what you were hoping for us to share with you. So at this point, I'll just ask Sister Shazia if she could just confirm if there's any questions that we need to take.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Walaikum salam.
One question was, will we be given an editable version of these resources, for example, lesson plans?
Okay, so all the lesson plans will be coming over to you in PDF format. Now, I'm pretty certain, because I've tried this quite recently, you can edit PDFs if you download the appropriate PDF editor. So what I would suggest is that once you receive them, try to edit the PDFs if that's what you're looking to do through your current software that you have for viewing PDFs. If you're unable to do that, then you might just need to do an upgrade from Acrobat so that you get the editor version of PDFs. I hope that answers that question. If you have any further problems with that, again, drop us an email and inshallah, we can try and help you to work around that. Any other questions, Shazia?
Yeah, and the other one was, will there be no physical copies of resources sent out to schools?
No, there will be no physical copies sent out to schools. So we decided quite early on that the scheme is going to be a digital version. We are not going to create any prints. And that's partly down to a couple of factors, really. One was cost, the cost of printing. Unfortunately, if we have to absorb that cost, we would have to look to pass those costs down, and it would just make the scheme more expensive. The second part was actually the practicalities and the process of printing. It would have meant that we had to get a publisher possibly on board. We'd have to get a printer on board. We'd have to get a designer on board, who all have expertise in developing a printed material, and it would have lengthened the process, cost, and capacity and resources already a challenge as it is. So we made that decision that a digital version was all that we could do at this stage. Any other questions?
There was one thing, so there's no way that we're able to send Word and PDF. It will be easier for us.
No. So the versions that we will be sending are only PDFs.
And
they won't
last question that's just come up is, do you have a map of sensitive issues that are covered in primary with sample lesson plans that we can use for our parent consultation?
So I'll answer part of that question, and I'll ask Talal to answer the other half of the question. So everybody can now download sample lesson plans. So if anybody here hasn't bought into the scheme and you would like to view some of our lessons, on the website, again on the RSE Hub, we've added a functionality where you can download 2 sample lesson plans, one for primary and one for secondary. That just gives you a taste and a view of what we've done, and for you to get an idea of if this scheme is right for you. Talal, would you like to answer the second part of that question?
Yeah, in terms of sensitive topics or challenging topics, I would say more than sensitive, probably challenging topics for primary and secondary. If you have a look at the planning, the long-term and medium-term plans, will give you an idea of the narrative that's going to come in the lessons. So the example I just gave you of the impact of pornography, if you take that and you look at the medium-term objectives, I'll tell you in which direction and how that's going to be taught. So just have a look at the medium-term plans, and from there you get an idea of how those difficult topics, challenging topics are going to be taught. Okay.
Yep, Shazia, any other questions?
One's just come through. Does the pack include the RSE policy?
So you can already download. So this particular pack for phase 2 includes the lesson plans and the long-term plan for phase 2 for summer term. As for all other resources such as policies, you can download that off the RSE Hub. There's a section there where I think it's called free RSE resources, and within there you can access policies, guidance documents, etc. Any more, Shazia?
Yeah, there's one come through. Can you explain how you decided on age appropriateness of material and what the DFE and Ofsted view is of this? So example, are same gender families covered in Key Stage 1?
Talal, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to refer you to the previous training that I've done, and on this. So if you go onto the RSE Hub, there's some training modules there. There's one where I've gone in detail about content, about age appropriateness. You'll be able to get a real idea of what's required in terms of Ofsted. If you have a look at DFE guidance, again, have a look at the challenging lessons webinar that I presented previously and available. And there's also on the AMS hub, there's a document there about the guidance, and it kind of gives you the idea of what actually is the guidance. And I'll be honest with you, it's conflicting. You need to read that and understand it. And to be honest with you, in primary, in our scheme, I would say that, you know, there's all the material we feel is age appropriate and relevant. Now, again, for schools, you have to take ownership. If we decided as writers, as AMS, as a team, that look, we are going to put, you know, sexual pressure, choosing to delay sex at year 8 or year 9, wherever we decided to put it. You say, no, actually, for our school, we'd rather put that in year 9, or we'd rather put that in year 7. That's for you to decide. Age appropriateness is something that you are going to have a little look at. From our side, we've tried to fit where we think, alhamdulillah, this is a great place to go. Again, ownership is a key thing for you. You can adapt and change things around and make it yours, inshallah. And again, feedback, the point of feedback is that we are going to test this now in live conditions, essentially your classrooms and, you know, throughout the country. And when we get the feedback to say, okay, you gave us this lesson plan in this format, we would like this, this, and this. And inshallah, we'll take that feedback on board and we want to improve. And this is a starting point for us. We hope that it is high quality and also that, but also we recognize that inshallah it can be improved. I think Hasina's got her raised her hand. Brother Abdul Wadud.
That's fine. I'll unmute you, Hasina. Just one moment.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You can hear me. Just wanted to say to Brother Talal's point about whether it's age appropriate material, to colleagues that are listening from our various member schools and other schools. I think it's quite important, not just that it is age appropriate, but also your teachers are quite clearly aware of what learning children have had before. So we're building upon children's learning, we're deepening that learning and understanding over time. If you come across one of our lesson plans and looking at it, you see that children perhaps haven't had particular content coverage that's going to allow them to access the learning of that particular lesson plan, it's quite important that in your schools, as teachers and with senior leaders, you are looking at not just the age appropriate content of that lesson plan, but whether they have accessed some of that content before in order for that to build on. So a key activity will be for your schools to look at what it is that you're already teaching and whether the lesson plans that you're going to take from us are going to be suitable at that particular time. So I would just ask schools to give that some consideration.
Great. Jazakallah khair, Sister Hasina, for your input. Okay, Sister Shazia, do we have any more questions? I think there's a few more, and then inshallah we'll answer those and then bring the session to a close.
Yeah, there's just a couple more. Will the resources be updated, amended following the pilot?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? Will
the resources be updated or amended following the pilot?
Okay, let me try and make sense of that question. So we piloted our draft lessons. So as Talal explained earlier on, as we were developing our draft lessons, we were piloting the lessons at the same time. And the feedback from the pilot then contributed towards the final product, which inshallah will be released tomorrow. So the lessons have already gone through a piloting phase for us to be able to release them tomorrow. I'm not sure if that quite answers the question.
Maybe, yeah, I think it does answer the question. Maybe they're saying that after phase 2, will there be a refresh? There'll be a refresh in phase 4, inshallah.
Yeah. You had a couple of more questions, Shazia?
Yeah. Just to clarify, as a primary school, are we okay to teach relationship education just one term instead of the entire year?
Talal, would you like to take that?
I'm just trying to understand how you will do it over one term. Are you kind of, are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 1 term? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 1 term? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 1 term? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 1 term? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 1 term? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 1 term? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you going to do it over 2 terms? Or are you And first question is, why would you want to do that? I mean, I'm just trying to understand why you want to do that. And okay, Hasina's got a hand raised. Maybe she's got some answers to this one. Sister Hasina.
Sorry, Jazakallah, Brother Talal. I have sent a private message to the brother. I think it's quite important, again, for schools to look at what it is that's already been taught in your schools and when it's been taught. You certainly wouldn't just be teaching internet safety and keeping safe online in just the autumn term. It would be something that you would address time and time again during the course of an academic year. So it's quite important that we don't see RSE as a subject on your curriculum. That's not how this works. It's really about looking at how it's being taught across subjects in key stage in different phases across the school. So when we're looking at sexually transmitted diseases, for example, this is something that would be taught at key stage 4 in science. You will be teaching different types of understanding of online safety for different year groups. So it certainly wouldn't be taught in one term.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Hasina. Okay, so brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's the last of our questions. If you do have any further questions that come to mind, feel free to email us, and inshallah we will answer your questions and get back to you inshallah within a reasonable time. So as I bring the session to a close, I just wanted to remind a few things. One is that we do have all of our RSE material and content and webinars uploaded onto YouTube. So this video, inshallah, by later on this afternoon will be uploaded, so you can rewatch it, share it with friends and family, inshallah. And do keep an eye out on our YouTube page, subscribe, because inshallah, you know, a lot of our material going forward will be centered around here. And I just wanted to bring everyone to the attention of the RSE Hub. Alhamdulillah, you know, we built this hub and we've tried to be as transparent, open, and as sharing as possible. So I'm sure many of you have already been there, but just a few updates. So you can already see, somebody mentioned earlier on, where can I access the policies? You can access the policies where it says free RSE resources. In the training section there, that's exclusively available only to those people who have bought into the curriculum. You will have a unique login where you can go and access the training modules as well as the resources. For those who still require parent consultation resources, they're there. We've added a section for RSE statutory guidance. So all of the guidance documents that we've made reference to, there's a link there to all of them. And we've just uploaded sample lesson plans. So as I mentioned earlier on, we've got one lesson from primary, one lesson from secondary, and again, really useful and helpful for those people who are still pondering whether or not they should buy into this scheme or not. We've got a dedicated email address. You can email us about, get involved. We've got a few vacancies. If you want to come on board as a pilot in school, phase 3 is really going to need your help from a piloting point of view. So please get involved. The working group, as I mentioned, and the lesson plans feedback loop. All of our events are available. So if you've missed any, you can jump on here and watch the videos. We've got a lovely blog section. We've got a mother's perspective on RSE, a blog that we would encourage all of you to read up on. And then buy the curriculum. It's a part available for primary, secondary. It's a discounted rate for member schools. So if anybody's thinking of becoming an AMS member, now's the time so you can get the discount, inshallah. And then finally, FAQs. You know, we've got a suite of questions here in the FAQs that we would encourage you to access. So, Jazakallah khair for your time, for your patience. Jazakallah khair for supporting us. Alhamdulillah, we've tried our utmost to do this to the best of our ability. So inshallah, we are still striving to improve. So please bear with us if you do find any mistakes. And inshallah, we hope you find it useful. Thank you to everybody who's been involved in the completion of phase 2. It's a major milestone in this project. Inshallah, we hope that Allah gives us success to be able to complete phase 3 and phase 4. And for us, for all of the schools to be able to implement this successfully. So from myself and everybody else in the team, thank you, and inshallah take care. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.